Hey everyone, on this episode of Inside the Mind podcast about athletes, I have Erick Brundidge, who is a NFL free agent wide receiver, and we talked a lot about some of the struggles that he went through, especially during college as a football player, and some of the strategies he used to get out of those mental struggles. Won't spoil too much of it though, so roll the intro. And first thing I'll say, I'm going to assume that since you're from Green Bay, you're a Packers fan.
No, I'm not from Green Bay. I'm from Philly.
Okay, but you live in Green Bay.
Yeah, I live in Green Bay.
Are you? Does that mean they convert you to be a Packers fan yet, or not yet?
No, but I did work out for Green Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't have a favorite team. I just love the game.
Yeah.
So my perspective is, I like to evaluate, get more insight. I have favorite players.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, I probably wouldn't say I have a favorite team.
Yeah. I sometimes I wish I didn't have my favorite team is Green Bay. That's why I asked.
Oh, that's dope though, man, for real.
Yeah. Sometimes I wish that it kind of like hinders me on like who I like follow in the NFL and who I like, because if I think of someone like David Montgomery on the Bears or somebody who's a sick running back, and like part of me wants to like him, the other part of me sees him in a Bears uniform, and I'm like, I can't get past that. So sometimes I feel like it's better just to have favorite players than favorite teams, because kind of takes away the emotion out of it when you're kind of evaluating players and who to like model your game after and stuff.
Right.
Is there anyone that you like look up to in the league to try to model your game after, or like when you were growing up, just for example?
I would say growing up, I had a few, man. One of my favorites in particularly, I would say, is Chad Johnson. And
yeah,
I would
Ocho
say
Cinco.
Chad Johnson. Yeah, man, Ocho Cinco. I wouldn't talk about like, his off the field mentality, but like, his hard work mentality and, his fun. Like, he enjoys the game. Like, there's not many people that look at the game like, the way that he sees it. He sees everything as a competition, and he's always trying to better himself, whether it's, the little things, working on footwork, working on cuts, routes. And, he even calls his coach at nighttime, like 2 a.m. at times, just say, hey, coach, I got this idea. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the kind of enthusiasm, like, I like to say that I have when it comes to the game,
Yeah.
And it translates to life too,
Yeah. Kind of getting right into it from there. Like, one of the big things I like to talk to people about, like whether it's like athletes in my personal life or whatever on here, is like you need a passion for the game in order to reach a certain level. Like, if you don't like it, or if you don't have the right motivation in place, the game's going to eat you up, because it's a tough game and it's painful at times too. And the things you go through getting cut, all the way from getting cut to like winning a championship, like there's so many highs and lows that if you don't have that like internal love for football, you're almost kind of done before you started.
Right. Absolutely, man. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. Like, the majority of the game is mental, man. Like for instance, there's a lot of small things done well. And if you can't understand your playbook, then how can you be an asset? That's mental right there. Or
right.
How can you, play the game and not understand coverages, concepts, zones? Like, it's really a mental game. And especially from my position, playing a receiver position, you got to be able to literally block out the entire field, the fans, the players, like literally you have to focus in on the ball. Like, when I run my routes and I'm catching the ball, like, and I'm in the game, it's just me and the ball. There's nobody else. Like, you got to have that kind of mental focus, because I mean, honestly, there's no receiver that can ever say they never dropped the ball, and it's a part of the game. It happens. So the perspective is really, you got to try to minimize that. But the way that you minimize it is through focusing and paying attention. You ever see a guy like literally run a route and he drops the ball, but like he's turning upfield running?
Yeah.
That kind of thing happens because a guy's like, oh, it's so routine to catch the ball, and it's like you just forgot something,
Yeah. How did you get yourself to that like mentality where you're like blocking everybody out? Because you can sit there in front of 1,000 receivers, kids are like 12 or 13 years old, and tell them to do that, but they're not. Majority of them can't just do that overnight. Like, how do you or how would you tell others to kind of get to that place?
Well, I would say, kind of talking about what we said earlier, as far as like, a lot of small things done well, like just small things are catching 100 passes a day, or literally having somebody, throw you a football, or, being consistent, because consistency brings forth, opportunity. Because
Mm-hmm.
like when people talk about luck, in my personal opinion, I believe that luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about being prepared for the opportunity when it presents itself. Like no different than shooting jump shots. You might look at a game and say, how did the guy make that jump shot? But he probably shot that same shot thousands of times in the gym. So it's more so a routine. So I would say make it more so of a routine rather than just going out there and doing it. Because if it's a routine, you're more comfortable and you're more
Yeah.
prepared for the opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I would tell the little ones. Like, you just got to be consistent.
For sure, that it's like you gotta practice the stuff outside of the game situation. Like you gotta like remove
Absolutely.
yourself, because if you're like trying to like, you can almost compare it to like learning on the job. Like if you're learning on the job like in a regular workplace or whatever, it's not going to work out 99% of the time. Like there's just too much going on and you're so much
Hmm.
pressure where you got to kind of remove yourself and in practice almost try to work on like the mental things in practice, so that when it's game time, at least you got a little bit kind of that work under your belt where it's not so much of a shock, the difference, because it's
Hmm.
so, I mean, I feel it so much right now when I'm playing sports. Like right now is the difference between practice and game. In practice, like right now I'm playing a lot of tennis, and in practice, like I feel like I'm, Roger Federer or something on the court. And then right right when you like associate points with the game, it like sometimes it just all kind of just goes downward from there because there's that
Hmm.
pressure. So you got to work on these things outside of the game and in practice.
Right. And, since we're talking about this, is one major component that we did fail to bring up. And that component is visualization.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about creative visualization, it's literally putting yourself in that place mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So when you can see yourself doing that over and over again, or see yourself making that game winning touchdown, or scoring that jump shot, or seeing yourself doing it mentally will also create it physically. I normally go by this saying. I say act as the blossom of thought.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens in the physical without happening in the mental first. So if you see it in your mind, you'll hold it in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mental perspective of understanding the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I kind of do with like my athletes on the side here is like we do something called like a reset routine. Like if something's not
Hmm.
going your way, you do a reset routine where like it's a 3-step process. It's an ABC. It's like A is like you accept that the bad thing happened, and B is you breathe and relax to get the heart rate down, and then the C is like a clear imagery where it's like you start to visualize what that the play is going to look like next time. And there's been a lot of like research that I've been reading about that, like actually just visualizing things in your head and doing those like mental exercises can be just as
Hmm.
important or just as helpful as like actually like physical exercise or physical training. And it's pretty crazy when you think about it, how much the brain can control, how well you're playing on the field, for example, as a receiver. Because you can have
Absolutely.
all the talent in the world, but if your mind's not there, it's worthless.
Right. And to kind of bank on what you were saying, I forget where I read this at, but a couple guys did a study on guys shooting free throws.
Hmm.
So they had some guys shoot like 25 free throws, so like three sets of guys. So one set of guys actually practiced shooting their free throws, and then there was one group that visually saw themselves shooting the free throws,
Yeah.
and it's a group that just literally just shot and didn't care, like, and they literally had them shoot the first time, took their numbers, and then waited like a couple weeks or something like that, and then had them shoot again. And they came to the conclusion that the ones who actually practiced did just as good as the ones who actually visualized themselves making it, but the ones who just shot the shot, they kind of remained the
Yeah.
same or even decreased in value. So
Yeah.
it goes to show that, there's two avenues to the street. One of them is working physically and the other one is working mentally. But
Yeah.
when you have the yin and the yang and you're equally yoked, then it's an amazing result that you see in the process of doing this. Like, and that's the beauty about it, like even in life, like, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a scientist or whatever it is you want to be, if you see yourself doing it, you'll do it. But the work doesn't necessarily become work. It becomes enjoyment because you're on the path to, following the desires of your heart. And that's
Yeah.
how things, create themselves through
Yeah.
happiness and not being stressed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So many times it's pretty crazy when you think about it, like how we talk about like athletes doing these things in the context of sports, but like a lot of these things just apply to like life in general. Like for example, like blocking the noise out when you're on the field. Like that's like people got to do that every day in their life or they're getting judgment on social media or something, or it's almost like sports is like a way to like teach kids or teenagers maybe like how these mental exercises can be helpful, and then like let's try and help them do it with their whole life, because sports is
Mm-hmm.
just an extension of life, right? And everybody goes through the mental struggles every day and every
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
And it's
So
beautiful,
go
man.
ahead.
I just said it's beautiful,
Yeah,
like just gotta enjoy the journey more than you love the reward, man. Like it's a beautiful process. It's almost like a flower, like the
yeah,
flower, it blossoms, it grows, and it develops. And you know like if you stress about the journey, how can you appreciate the reward? You just gotta appreciate the good and the bad, because if
yeah.
you appreciate the both of them, you'll be more accepting of the reward.
Yeah, yeah. And kind of looking at like kind of your story through football, I'm sure that's something you can relate through a bit more, is the like
Mm-hmm.
enjoying the process, because not every football player's like progression is straight up. Sometimes you got ups and downs and bumps and whatnot, and kind of reading through like your profile and stuff and seeing teams you've been on and stuff. I mean, there's probably nobody, hard to find somebody out there that's been through maybe more stuff than you've been through, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, and that's the thing, man. Like, I've grown to enjoy this entire process. Like, even speaking with you, it's a blessing. Like I said, it's always the little things. Like, you know, for instance, I can't get out the bed in the morning without saying, you know what, I need to make my bed. Like I always make my bed. Like sports has brought forth more of an obedience mentality of character. It's
Hmm.
like how can you expect to do something if you can't treat yourself right?
Hmm.
Like you got to be honest with yourself in this process. Like when you washing your car and you already put the hose and everything away, and then you see a stain on your car, do you know, pull all the hose back out and wash it off, or do you just say, I'm good? Like
Yeah,
is okay just enough, or do you want to succeed exponentially?
mhm.
Like that's my mentality. It's like everything I do, I want to do to the best of my ability. So I'm always trying to educate myself, whether it's, read. I love to read, by the way, whether
Yeah,
it's reading, whether it's surfing the web, or, understanding and listening to people. And another thing that, I've grown to understand is wisdom speaks and knowledge listens. I mean, my fault. Knowledge speaks and wisdom listens.
hmm,
So the knowledgeable person will be able to educe his understanding to another, which is like transferring of knowledge.
yeah, yeah,
And the wise man listens because he understands. And some people look at it like, well, why can't I just lead? No, in order to lead, you have to be a great follower, because a great follower can become a great leader someday. And that's my goal. I want to not only uh play ball, but it's deeper than just playing ball. It's like I want to put my imprint on the world. Like I want to, bring forth, peace and happiness amongst everyone. Like, I want to be that symbol to show everybody, hey, it can be done. If you
yeah,
put your time and your work in, you'll achieve it.
yeah, yeah.
And that's really what I see.
100%, 100%. Has there been any books that you've read, since you said you're huge into reading, any books recently that you've read that have been like centered around like almost like the mindset of an athlete, or in regards, or has helped you at least as an athlete kind of get over maybe some mental hurdles and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Shoot, I got a lot. Where should I start? I can start with The Outliers. That's a
Hmm.
great book. It talks about the hockey players from Canada in there.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. That one's a bit more relatable to me then.
It's a very, very great read, and it talks about, how the demands, of understanding the now can create better opportunity for you. And also, I study people. Like, for instance, a guy like Michael Jordan. What
Hmm.
makes Michael Jordan different than everybody else? What makes him different is his mentality. Michael Jordan never was worried about the outside force because the outside force didn't exist to him because his biggest enemy was himself.
Yeah.
Like I'm not worried about the next man because I'm my biggest component. I'm my biggest challenge.
Hmm.
But he utilized those outside sources to bring forth more of a competition from within. For instance, it was a time where a guy literally was talking smack about MJ, and MJ literally was like sitting on the bench, and they was down like 14. He's like, okay, you want to talk like that? All right. And then he came back in the game, and they came back and won the game in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
and he had like 20 something points in that quarter. Like, it's little stuff like that. Then you got a guy like uh Bill Gates, like Bill Gates literally would wake up and sleep literally right where his computer was because he was working on something that he seen fit for the world and himself. Like
Yeah.
those are the kind of outliers. Notice I said outliers from the book. Those
Yeah.
are the kind of outliers that make a change in the world. Like, you have to figure out what your niche is in this world. And I also have a clothing brand.
Yeah.
It's called Life Love Incorporated. Okay. And the reason why I'm bringing up that the brand is because it brings forth more of what we're talking about. Like, literally, like, I created the brand because one thing we have is life, right? Like, regardless of who you are, you have life. You're blessed with an opportunity to live. And no matter what you want, where you're at in life, you want to be appreciated. You want to be loved, and understanding that you have life and you want to be loved. Now we are different, but we're blessed with different abilities. So it's up to us to incorporate our blessings and our talents into this one world. So that's where the name Life Love Incorporated came from,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what I stand for. Like, I really am trying to help anybody in every way that I can possible, because it's not about me. It's about helping others. It's about enjoying life and showing gratitude and being appreciative for what you have and what you don't have. Because eventually, if you focus on what you already have, then you'll be blessed more abundantly. But if you focus on what you don't have, you put yourself in this paradigm of stress and misery.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot like what I do with kids, like the kids that I kind of the work with and stuff, primarily with
Mm-hmm.
hockey, is like we tell them to focus on the do's and not the don'ts. Like, we don't tell them don't do this or don't do that, because that's, well, like a negative kind of connotation, I guess, to having your mindset of always being scared of not doing something. And B, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not telling you what to do. Like, I could tell somebody not to do something, but what do I do instead? And instead we try to focus on positive, or like positive behaviors, or like things to do. So it's kind of similar to what you're talking about. We're focused on what you have and what you can do, rather than what you don't have, because
Mm-hmm.
just really focusing on the do's and the yeses, and what you have, that's all kind of centered around just positivity. And slowly and surely, if you just keep focusing on what you have, what you can do, instead of what you don't have and what you can't do, it's just kind of making that whole shift in your mind of being positive versus negative. And really, it's just one step closer into achieving that, like, mental state that will help you not only in sports but in life in general.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. And when you was talking about this, you made me think about a quote from Albert Einstein. He said, "If you tell a fish that he can't climb a tree, he'll live the rest of his life thinking that he's stupid."
Yeah.
And I mean, it resonates because it's just like, who am I, or who are you, or who are anybody to tell somebody that they can't do something? Like, you're not supposed to put your negative inputs on someone, because if you can think it, you can create it. Like, literally. And the thing about this is, children are, I would say, they're born geniuses,
Mhm.
because they understand the nothingness. But as they grow and as they develop, their minds are altered by the, you know, the outward appearances and the outward things that they're exposed to. Not saying that it's a bad thing, but I'm saying it can also help and it can hurt the youth. Because let's say a child was born in a negative or a poverty style of environment, they may have that mentality of, I might never be nothing. Or somebody could be born in a very wealthy environment and say, hey, I'm going to be this. Or because they got access to certain stuff. But it could go either way, but I'm just saying that as a child or as a youth, they can always go different ways. But as long as you continue to allow them to harness their desires and let them hold on to it, it creates that strong belief system, which creates success in the mind, because literally nobody can go anywhere unless they go there in their mind. Like, this is some really, really deep stuff, man. Like, everything around you, everything around me, it was originally a thought. Like, thoughts become things. And it's very, very sensitive, because, like, literally, you could bless or curse a man with the tongue, and you might not realize it, or I might not realize it, or something of that sort. But something that someone says can carry along with them for a long period of time, So that's why I always try to talk positive and say, yes, you can, rather than no, you can't. Like, you could do whatever you put your mind to, and when a young person understands that and they apply it to their lives, they will do beautiful things, Like,
was you obviously, like, you're preaching obviously about positive mindset and stuff, and it's pretty apparent you have yourself a really positive mindset. Has it always been like that in sports with you, or was there a time where you felt like you had more of a negative mindset and there was like a light bulb or aha moment where you kind of switched the flip to being more positive, or was it the opposite case where you've just kind of been, that positive mindset has just been kind of with you since the beginning of football?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, like, we all have our ups and downs, but, like, it was a time where, I'll be honest, when I was in college, we were undefeated, playing against another undefeated team. I had dropped the deep ball, literally, and it was like 3rd and like 20, and I dropped a touchdown, and I looked up, and I seen a Green Bay scout there, and I dropped the ball, looked up, he was writing in his pad. I'm like, oh, man, like, I was so mad, and I let that stick with me, and it ruined my game.
Yeah.
So that's just a particular example of, me being down. But I would honestly say the moment changed for me when I was in college, and I ended up signing with my agent. Literally, man, we watched The Pursuit of Happiness together. He flew me down, and like, we had like more of that closure. Like, it wasn't like, oh, business. It was more like a big brother, like, and then more so he had me kind of read books, and like, that kind of stuff, like, enlightened me, and it, ever since then, it was a spark. And even and another thing is injuries. Like, I had shoulder surgery, worked out with the Browns in August. Literally, like, coming off of those injuries, they're very, very stressful, and those are some things that allowed me to better myself. Like, for instance, I'm talking about this because when you go through an injury, that's probably the hardest point for an athlete. And I say that because it's only one or two things you're going to do. Either you're going to let that injury, take over you, or you're going to overcome it. And through those injuries, those have allowed me to develop my mind, because it's a lot of free time, and I began to develop the mentality to want to succeed through therapy and not listening to the no's, like, literally putting myself to, situations where it's like, you're going to challenge yourself. And those challenges brought forth more of the way that I think now. So I would say more in college and dealing with the injuries, that's what created the way that I am today. That's why I'm the person I am today.
Yeah. Injuries is something I can like totally relate to, because I've like to go through a couple of my injuries I've had in my life. Like, I broke my leg, I've torn my chest muscle, I've broken my finger a bunch of times, I've like sprained my ankle a bunch of times, and all those are like significant injuries that kept me out of sports for at least a couple weeks, and up to like a year in some cases. When I tore my chest, I was like done with powerlifting at that moment, and really haven't gotten back into powerlifting since. But it's pretty like it's a pretty scary situation for athletes when they get injured, A, because they don't know if they're ever going to recover or not, but B, like just like that mental kind of like the mental struggle you go through, at least the first time you have an injury where you're on the sideline and you can't participate, and you're kind of thinking in your head, like, is the next guy up going to get my spot? Am I ever going to be the same again? Like, I just want to be out there and help my team, blah, blah, blah. You go through all those mental struggles with an injury, but like how you said, it's really, injuries are a source of inspiration or a source of growth for athletes, because it forces you to deal with adversity and forces you to change your mindset just so you can just get day to day, get through your day,
right?
Not just constantly thinking about what's wrong about your injury and whatnot. And then again, when you're kind of ready to return to football or whatever sport an athlete plays, there's that like worry of re-injuring yourself potentially, and that's another mental struggle you got to force yourself to get through. So injuries really, your body deteriorates in an injury, but I always think that injury lets your mind grow even stronger.
That's the next thing I was gonna say. It's absolutely true, man. Because literally, most people don't understand this, but literally, they say that when you get surgery as an athlete and you come back, you normally come back like stronger. And I think you come back stronger because you're working on muscles that you're not really used to using. Like for instance, when I broke my foot, my balance was crappy, and going to therapy every day and doing foot fire movements and all that stuff. To be honest, listen to this. So I was running like, I want to say about 4-4 lows, 40 times, 4-4 mids, broke my foot, came back and ran a 4-3-1.
Right.
That's even faster than what I was running when I was healthy. So sometimes injuries can be a blessing in disguise. It all varies down like to what you said, Are you willing to put in the work, or are you just going to let it overcome you,
Mm-hmm.
So that is deep right there, man. That's some jewels you just dropped right there. You got to let the little ones know that, hey, if you get hurt, it's okay. You just got keep pushing through it and work yourself, and also work your mind, because if you work your mind throughout that process, it makes you more sharper, because you'll start to visualize yourself doing the things, even though you can't, like literally, it was times where I would do exercises with my eyes closed. And, to be honest, back then, I'm like, eyes closed. What the heck I'm doing this for? But then I understand and I realize, like, yo, my balance is really good now because I'm doing it with my eyes closed. And then in addition to that, I see myself doing it. So when I see myself doing it, it just becomes routine, like we was talking about earlier, like those are all of the little things. Like, man, we dropping a lot of knowledge right now, and it's it's very, very deep, man. And I appreciate the whole conversation, the talk you having me. Like, yeah, man, it's big.
Yeah. One last thing I'll kind of say on the kind of injury front is how you mentioned how people come back stronger. I don't think there's a better example than Adrian Peterson, because I think he tore his ACL and MCL. I think it was 2011. Mm-hmm. He came back the next year. I mean, my math or my facts might be a bit off here, but I'm pretty sure that he came back the next year, and that's when he ran for 2,000 yards for the Vikings. Like,
yeah, he won the rushing title and everything. Comeback player of the year. That was amazing.
Yeah,
It's not often you see somebody do that, and that's the other thing. Like a guy like AP, he has that fearless will to not be denied. Like when he was in New Orleans, they were not giving him a lot of carries, and he like, yo, coach, I could do more than this. I'm valuable, and he believed in himself. So he went out there, went to Washington, and bet on himself. And look at him, like last year, he put up the numbers and he reserved himself as another opportunity. Went to the Redskins this year and he did good. Like he's like what, like fourth or fifth on the all-time, or sixth on the all-time rushing list. Like
he's up there. Yeah,
it's amazing.
And when you think like, like I can be worried about re-injuring myself in whatever sport I play, but I don't think there's a greater risk to re-injury or a greater risk to injury than a football player and ACL and MCL injuries, because you're cutting with so much force, right? And especially
lower extremity injuries, crazy.
And especially when you're like a skill position player like receiver or running back, where not only are you cutting, but you got like guys coming at you that are aiming not necessarily for your knee, but they're coming to tackle you. And sometimes you just never know what happens when there's a tackle. You could pop a knee out or something. But I mean, football is like, you obviously know, playing football most of your life, that it's a dangerous sport, and it just kind of goes to show how much of like a mental warrior that AP is, that he can tear his, I mean, no harder injury to come back from than an ACL and MCL tear, and he came back and just, took the league by storm again and ran for 2,000 yards, and it's really a lesson, and really a once in a lifetime player and mentality that guy has. Pretty close to, like, I don't want to put anybody in the same discussion as Michael Jordan, but he's probably as close as they come when it comes to running backs for like that Michael Jordan mentality, because he just gives it every day.
Absolutely, man. Like that's really what it is. It's putting that will and that skill together, and creating that opportunity. Like I love the way that you said that, because he does have that mentality and that mindset. Like he's tremendous at it, and whether he succeeds or whether he doesn't succeed, he's still going to it with the same mentality. I gave it my all, and you want to be one of those players that leave it all out there, because at the end of the day, you don't want to have doubts. Oh man, I should have did this. Well, if you focus more on doing that, you would have did it, And that's another thing with life. You really don't want to live life with regrets, because if you live life with regrets, it will haunt you for the rest of your life. And I got a question for you. Where do you think the most wealthiest place on earth is?
Most wealthiest place on earth? I'm assuming you have the answer, but my kind of stab in the dark would be like Abu Dhabi or something, like in the Middle East.
The graveyard. And I say the graveyard because
you tricked me. That's not fair. That's a trick question.
Yeah, it was. I mean, because that's where the most ideas that went uninvented lay.
Right.
Like a lot of people's creations, thoughts, perspectives. Because remember, we're all blessed with different perspectives.
Yeah.
So because we're blessed with those different perspectives and we see the world in such a different place, it allows us to create those things. And that's what I look at. Like, like so many ideas and things that went uncreated, with somebody's life, and it was buried with them. Like that's not what I want, I want everybody to say, hey, leave it all out there, like no different than playing the game. You got to leave it all out there. Like, if it's something that you want in your life, go at it full force, because if you don't, it's going to haunt you.
Yeah. What's kind of, before we wrap up here, what's kind of your plan moving forward now with football? Is this something you're still training for day to day? Is it something that you're taking a step back on? What's your plan moving forward with things?
Oh man, every day, man. I'm working my tail off every day, man. I actually got a agent that I'm working with now, a new agent. He's a good dude, man. Very high spirited. We talk very often. Great connection, great contacts. Also, I got invited to an all-star game down at in Dallas for the it's a league called the Spring League. It's my opportunity to participate at the Cowboys facility, work out in front of some guys, play against some high quality players, and just get more film for the year. And also, I'm still talking to a couple teams. I got a couple NFL workouts coming up. So me doing my workout is just basically training and everything on a day-to-day basis, so that I can be prepared for that opportunity when it presents itself. So,
sure.
I mean, we definitely have, teams that are in the mix and everything. And, the opportunity is really good now because, kind of teams are kind of closing up and they're really getting ready for next year. Yeah. So that's the perspective. My perspective is take care of what I need to take care of now. I got an agent that's, negotiating with teams and, go out there because I came off an injury. The whole goal is to go to the All-Star game, dominate, make plays, get in the camp, boom, we there,
Yeah.
And it's a joyous process, like we're gonna see how my hard work and everything that I'm putting forth, creates the opportunity, and that's the beautiful part. It's like you enjoy everything, you put the work in, and boom, like it's like making a cake. You got all the ingredients, put it in there, bake it up, boom.
There you
So
go.
yeah.
And it's got to help a lot having, like, when you think of like just taking away of all the distractions and stuff, and an agent's got to help a lot with that because he just kind of takes care of all like the negotiations and like talking to teams and stuff. And he just kind of lets you focus on you being the best receiver you can be, lets you do all the training, physical and mental training stuff you got to do. So I can imagine that that's like a huge help for you. It's having that agent to kind of take care of things and also maybe to point you in a bit of bit of the
Hmm.
right direction as well when needed.
Right. Also got a publicist too. She
There you
does a
go.
good job with things as well.
There you go. You got a
She
good
kicks me
team
on my
around you
P's and
then.
Q's. Yeah,
There you
definitely
go.
got a good team. That's most important, man. And to be honest, shout out to April Monnet, man. And she's been doing pretty good for me, so I appreciate her. Shout out to Michael Hayes. those people are doing pretty good for me too. That's my agent I'm working with. So those two, those my little team. They got me together and everything. So I appreciate them too.
Yeah. Awesome to hear, Eric. I wish you the best of luck at the All-Star game. I'm definitely rooting for you moving forward and really appreciate you taking the time here to spit some knowledge about, football in general, but not just football, I guess, but sports in general and life in general as well, the mental side of just everything we kind of covered today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. Make sure
Yeah.
y'all follow me on my Instagram at Erick_Brundidge and Twitter at eBrundidge and also my clothing brand at Life Love Incorporated. So appreciate you for having me on and thanks for the time, man. And looking forward to big things in the future.
Thanks, guys, again for checking out this episode. If you enjoyed any part of it, please share it with your friends and family, and I'll speak to you next time.